Hello out there. This is Josh from the Bethlehem Area Public Library. We will be starting our presentation in just a minute, so hang tight. Hello out there. This is Josh from the Bethlehem Area Public Library. Okay, thanks again for joining us. Again, this is Josh Burke from the Bethlehem Area Public Library. I really just have one job today, other than to make as many Swift-related puns as I can make throughout the evening. But my main job here is to, first of all, I'm going to play a short introductory video here for you so you can learn about the Masonic Temple and the Chimney Swifts living there. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jenny Gilrayne, who is our actual host, and she will introduce our speaker and thank our grant givers and give you all the information you need to know. So I'm just going to start that video in just a second and enjoy.
It would be nice to have local community involved.
This past summer, 2020, I brought groups of people to this parking lot to witness the amazing, amazing phenomenon of thousands of chimney swifts swirling into the chimney you see behind me. At some point, just around sunset, the birds just collectively decide to start pouring into the chimney.
Due to alterations in habitat and changing of building structures, chimneys in particular, chimney swifts have been in decline since the mid-1960s, and the most recent estimate is that they've had a 72% decline in their overall population. Providing critical migratory roosting sites like these chimneys for chimney swifts is paramount in their overall population survival.
So we've got some people actually already getting involved. So we're here on the first day of demolition, and talked to the engineers last week, trying to have them figure out a way to save the actual chimney in place. And you can see how easy the building's coming down, so it's going to be kind of an interesting engineering challenge. If we can, we're going to save it in place. If not, we'll go to plan B, which is actually rebuild a chimney about 60 feet further to the north on the other side of the parking lot. And hopefully that's the best way to get the birds back. At the end of the day, the biggest goal we have here is just to save something so these birds have the ability to do roots when they're migrating.
And in doing so, we're trying to save thousands, probably tens of thousands of swifts, a whole generation of swifts. So we invite you to join this amazing effort to save these amazing birds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for joining us again. I think you are about to see some of the faces that you just saw in that video, and I think we will share that link again so you can support the project if you would like. We have a page on the library's website, bapl.org/saveourswifts, with all the materials pulled together, and again, we'll share that link again. So now I will introduce Jenny Gilrayne. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, Josh. Thank you so much. My name is Jenny, even though the screen says Jane. That's my other name. Jenny is the right one to call me in case you want to ask me any questions. So my first job is to thank our sponsors. Thanks to the Lehigh Valley Engaged Humanities Council for supporting these three, this is the first in 3 public forums. And thank you also to the Bethlehem Area Public Library for hosting them. I want to thank other organizations who helped write this grant that is supporting these public forums. One is Lehigh University's Southside Initiative and Mary Foltz. Another is the Lehigh Valley Audubon Society, President Peter Sanger, who is going to speak today, and Scott Burnett, who was not able to be here today, but who has been very much in support of this project. Also wanted to thank Artifact Incorporated, the architectural firm, which will be featured in our second forum, especially Christine Usler, and the Bethlehem City Environmental Advisory Council, which will also be represented in our third forum, as well as several departments at Lehigh University, Department of Political Science and Environmental Science. And we will have 2 professors on our third forum as well. Lastly, I want to thank John Noble and family, his wife Lynn and his 2 daughters for their effort to preserve the Masonic temple, Chimney, in the course of demolishing the building for redevelopment. So before I introduce our main event, our speaker, Peter, I would like to briefly tell the story of personal story of discovering these birds and then the effort to save this particular chimney. So about 2 years ago, I noticed the birds. I've been living here for a long time, but just hadn't noticed them for some reason. They fly very high in the sky. And it took me a while to figure out that they were chimney swifts. And once I did, my husband and I went on a kind of mission during the summer to try to figure out where they were roosting. And we took walks every summer evening and just all over Bethlehem, south side, north side, looking at dusk for where they were going to go. Because once we discovered they were chimney swifts, we knew that in the evening they had to go into a chimney. So we finally found out that they were going into this Masonic temple chimney. If you don't know where that is, it's on Route 378 or Wyandotte Street, right at the entrance to the south side, or you could say the exit to the south side. The actual address is 202 Wyandotte Street. And I knew that this particular site was going to be redeveloped and that the Masonic temple was going to be demolished, but I had no idea when. So this past summer, I brought groups of people to watch the birds go into the chimney, as I said on the video, and it really is a beautiful sight. This chimney is 45 feet high and 5 foot square. And one evening, I estimated about 2,200 birds going into that chimney in one evening. That was in August, which I found out later is the time when they are migrating in large groups to the south. They go all the way down to South America, and Peter's going to tell you more about where in South America they go. But one day I happened to be walking around the neighborhood and I noticed that a chain link fence had gone up around the Masonic temple, and there were keep out signs and construction signs. So I started to get very concerned that this chimney would be demolished along with the Masonic temple, because I knew that the temple was slated for demolition. So I contacted Christine Usler of Artifact Incorporated, who I found out is the architect who is being hired or has been hired to design the redevelopment of this property. And she put me in touch with John Noble, who is the owner of the property as well as the developer. And he gave me a call. And over the course of time, at first, he told me about other conservation efforts that he was involved in. He told me he was interested in saving the birds. And then we had a meeting right on site with Scott Burnett, who is on the Habitat Committee of the Lehigh Valley Audubon Society. And the first plan was to he was going to demolish the current chimney and try to build a replacement chimney. I think it was planned for about 60 feet north of the current chimney, which was wonderful. I was so glad he was willing to save the birds, but there's no guarantee that the birds will find the new chimney, even if it's just 60 feet away. So, and the reason he decided to do that rather than save the initial chimney is because his engineer told him it wasn't possible to save this chimney. And then he brought another engineer into the project, a friend of his, who was excited by the challenge and told him it's possible. So I just drove by the site today. Gradually, the building has been demolished over the last month. And today I noticed that the entire building has been demolished around the chimney. So the only thing that's standing is this 45-foot high, 5-foot square tower. And the next job for John in terms of saving this roost for the birds is the very expensive job of making it secure and safe, reinforcing it, building the foundation out, reinforcing it with steel, all that kind of thing. So that's the purpose of this particular fundraiser, the GoFundMe fundraiser. However, we have goals beyond that. And part of this series of 3 forums is to really educate our residents, not only of Bethlehem, but in the Lehigh Valley, about these incredible birds, and really try to get the public involved in finding out where else are they going besides this one chimney, and finding out how we can continue to be in relationship with these birds and try to save these birds in our town, at least. Yeah, so that's the point of this, and we're going to get all kinds of people involved in that discussion. So I just want to give you a little preview of the next 2 events. Hopefully everybody will come back, but let me tell you. So the one after this one is going to be on March, hang on one second. Yeah, March 11th. And the title of that one is Changing Methods of Construction and the Impact on Chimney Swifts. And that one is going to feature Christine Usler. She's an amazing architect and historian, and she's going to tell us about how over time construction methods and design have changed. Because we are an industrial city, there are a lot of brick chimneys, but construction methods are changing and people aren't building them anymore. So she's going to talk about that. Our third and last forum is going to be on April 21st, and that's going to be an entire panel. And I'm just going to name the people on the panel to entice you to come back. And by the way, April 21st is the beginning of spring, obviously. And also the birds might be back by then. They will most likely be back, and we'll be able to actually see them in the sky. So the title of that forum is Modeling a Solution of Cooperation Between Conservation and Development, a panel discussion. And we have a really exciting panel. And I'm just going to name the panelists. So it'll be John Noble, the developer, the hero, who is actually willing to slow down his demolition, change his entire plan to save these birds. He's going to be on the panel. Peter Sanger, who is with us today, is going to be on the panel from the point of view of being an ornithologist and president of Lehigh Valley Audubon Society. Lynn Rothman, who is the chair of the the Bethlehem Environmental Advisory Council, and also an environmental scientist. Karen Beck-Pooley, who is professor of practice and director of environmental policy at Lehigh University. And lastly, Brina Holland is going to be the moderator, and she is professor of political science and the environmental initiative at Lehigh University. So I'm really excited about both of those next public forums. Thanks again to the Lehigh Valley Engaged Humanities Council. And let me introduce Peter. Just let me give a brief introduction of Peter, and then I'll pass it on to him. So Peter Sanger is an endowed research ornithologist and collection manager in the Bird Museum within the Acopian Center of Ornithology, Department of Biology, Muhlenberg College. He has been the president of the Lehigh Valley Audubon Society for the past 16 years and currently serves as the membership chair for the Wilson Ornithological Society. So thank you so much, Peter, for being here and for helping us to understand these mysterious and beautiful birds. And by the way, we will have a chance for questions at the end of Peter's presentation. So please stay after that.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay, hello, everybody. I'm used to speaking to people, so bear with me that when I'm used to looking at a computer screen a little bit. Let me share my screen and get to this. So I'm going to give you a brief introduction to chimney swifts. Normally Scott Burnett, who's our habitat chair for the Lehigh Valley Audubon Society, would be doing this, but unfortunately he fell ill, not COVID, fortunately. So I'm really the stand-in speaker, so bear with me a little bit. So this is a picture of a swift flying overhead, probably 100 times closer than you would normally see them. Swifts are very small, 5 to 6 inches, very light, very tiny.
Peter, I'm not seeing the picture. I'm not sure. Are you sharing? Josh, are you seeing the picture?
Nobody's seeing the PowerPoint?
No, I don't think so.
Let's
share that guy again.
I've hit it a few times. It's saying one participant can share at a time. Is that something maybe?
Maybe. I'll make you the host.
Maybe. That might be dangerous. Yeah. Okay. Share screen. Are you seeing that now?
Yes, now we see it.
Sorry about that.
Thank you,
Nope,
Peter.
no problem at all. If a Zoom meeting doesn't have some glitch in it, it isn't a Zoom meeting. There we go. Okay. So here's the picture I was talking about. It's probably the best look 99% of us will ever get of a chimney swift because they're usually very high up in the sky and they're very small. They're swift, no pun intended. I think I beat Josh on that one. If you notice their claws on the person's thumb, their claws are very long and sharp to cling to the inside. They evolved on roosting in trees, but it works well in our chimneys as well. And this is the typical view, and still probably better than the most that you'd normally get of a chimney swift. They're usually high up in the sky in pairs or in threes during the courtship season. And I'm going to try to share the sound of these guys and hope this works. Let me know, Josh or Jenny. Can you hear that? Yep. So when you're walking around Bethlehem or anywhere else in the area in spring, late April, May, this is what you should hear overhead. And look up and hear them because they're really neat to watch. They're very good flyers, and I think it's fascinating. But that's their chattering call that they do while they're flying. And go back to this. So what they're doing is they're aerial insect eaters. And what they do is eat flying insects. Their primary food is beetles, which is something I wasn't aware of until I dug into this a little bit after we got involved in this project. I assumed it was mosquitoes and things like that, but mosquitoes are generally out in the evening after the swifts go to roost. but they do eat mosquitoes and many other flying insects. I read one account, and again, you can imagine it's very difficult to be able to quantify exactly how many insects a bird eats in a day when it's flying around 100 feet over your head. But anywhere from an individual bird eating 1,000 insects to 12,000 insects to raise a nest, a brood, a group of nestlings from hatching to fledging. So that's a tremendous benefit to humans. These guys are called neotropical migrants. They spend the summers and warmer months in our area, but because they're obligate, they must or only eat insects. They need to fly south in the winter. And as Jenny was talking about earlier, they fly to South America. So our swifts fly about 3,500 miles to the northwestern part of South America, including Brazil, Peru, and the entire northwestern quadrant of South America. Down there, they're in cities, they're in tropical rainforests, roosting on trees and spread out, eating the abundant insect supply during the winter down there, or their summer. Actually, it's still probably, it sort of straddles the equator there, summer and winter. So these birds evolved over time without man's benefit or detriment. And what they used were hollow trees to nest and roost in. And it's hard to find a good picture of a big hollow tree, but if you can imagine, before Europeans came and the old growth forests were here, we had trees that were, 3, 4, 5, 6 feet across. And when they got hit by lightning, they'd be hollowed out, rot out, and over, tens of thousands of years, there was an abundant supply of hollow trees for these birds to use for roosting and nesting. And when they build nests, they make these really neat little stick nests on the inside of hollow trees formerly, and in our chimneys now, by taking tiny little twigs and gluing them to the inside surface with their saliva, which is very glue-like. And they laid between 3 and 5 eggs. And then we arrived, or I should say Europeans arrived, and because we wanted to have farmland, we needed firewood, we wanted to build homes, we basically cut down everything that was old growth, eliminating the Swiss natural habitat. But in its place, we built houses with chimneys. And we built a lot of chimneys because we heated with firewood. And when the industrial age came, we built huge chimneys for our industrial production. And the Masonic temple is sort of an example of that, where it's 5 feet square on the inside. It's a monstrous chimney. And the swifts adapted to this and quickly, actually, their numbers are projected or thought to have increased tremendously because of man and the benefit of the multitude of chimneys. So we actually did a good thing without trying. And they adapted. This is a picture of the inside of a chimney that's probably very similar to the Masonic temple, a mass of migrating chimney swifts using it as a roost. You can get tens of thousands in a big chimney at one time. So they're very critical. Unfortunately, times changed. We're now starting to cap chimneys. Chimneys are made out of stainless steel. They don't have any entrance or for the chimney, the swifts, or any gripping point. And we're tearing down the unused industrial chimneys from the industrial age. And without hollow trees or the chimneys for the swifts to use, they end up doing something like this. This is a migrating flock of chimney swifts, and I can't even imagine how many are in this picture. But they're roosting on the outside of a tree right down to ground level. And the problem with this is, imagine the vulnerability to predators or if there's cold rain at night, or a couple days of rain where they can't fly to feed, they're totally exposed to predation and the weather. And that's what was explained to Mr. Noble on why the Masonic temple chimney was so important, because those birds are very site specific. The 60 feet away new chimney, which was part of the original plan as a possibility, probably wouldn't have been a problem because that's real close. But if there had been no chimney involved or replacement, and that chimney had come down, the tens of thousands of swifts that probably used that chimney during migration probably would have ended up roosting like this, and many would have perished. So as Jenny mentioned, in the last 50 years, there's been about a 72% decline in their overall numbers, and they're really not sure why. Loss of habitat, nesting locations are all thought to be a major part of it, but recent studies are showing that something that may be even more imperiling them is the decline in flying insects, especially beetles. Beetles apparently are very high in protein and excellent food sources, so they can reproduce and migrate in good health. And the beetle population has crashed due to our pesticide use. So they've switched to other insects a little more for their feeding, and that's not allowing them to get to the proper health to reproduce properly. But we can help. This is Scott Burnett, who's supposed to be giving this talk, finishing up a chimney swift tower, one of about 24 that he's been involved in the area, in the tri-state area. And it's simply just a replica, or trying to look at a better word than that. It's basically a wooden chimney, freestanding, for the swifts to use. This is actually at my township building. This is one Scott and I put together. On each sign, we have interpretive signs to try to get one, what the structure is. It's actually a big nest box for birds and a roosting site, and try to get people to understand that these birds are so beneficial, eating flying insects, and how we need to help them. So this is, while we're building the tower, looking straight up from the bottom, looking out the top. And it's T111 cut sideways so that there are little ledges every few inches for the birds to cling to. And we checked the tower, not this one, but another one similar to it, 2 years after it was built. And it appears that we had 2 nests in it. These are chimney swift nests, excuse me. And they typically will only have 1 nesting pair in a tower in 1 year, but it isn't unknown that there'll be 2. And also other birds, other swifts can roost in these towers even when there's nesting birds there. They apparently don't hold it against birds that don't have a place to go. But generally when they're nesting, they're singular, but in migration, they roost in huge numbers. So this is another tower that Scott built on Lake Muhlenberg in Allentown, a little taller than the other one. And this is where the nests were, I believe. Now the chimney swift towers can be of multiple designs. I found this one on the web this morning, and it's quite colorful. And I thought I'd include it because one of our goals is to build these towers around Bethlehem to help promote the cause, and having something like this, I think, would be a good educational tool and be an decorative and draw some attention. But these are wood towers. They also come in masonry and multiple other designs. And for more detailed information, you can go to what's called chimneyswifts.org. Definitely do the plural of swifts, because if you don't, you end up at a chimney cleaning service website, and they can be detrimental if they clean them at the wrong time of the year. And another really good website for detailed information, if you're interested in digging into them more, is at Cornell University's website, All About Birds. And you can just type in All About Birds and it'll come right up. And as Jenny said, here's a picture of the chimney swift tower chimney swift tower chimney that we're trying to save for the swifts at the Masonic temple. This is before it was completely freestanding, but you can see that the developer, Mr. Noble, has gone to extraordinary efforts to try to save this chimney. It was completely attached to the building, and I am sure it has cost him a small fortune and serious delays in his construction project to try to save this for the benefit of the birds. But it's incredibly important and beneficial because tens of thousands of chimney swifts probably use this every fall and spring migration. They move in mass in a very tight time frame in the fall, but in the spring they still move in numbers and will roost in the chimneys as they move north and then scatter into their separate nesting sites. And that's what I prepared. So questions, be more than happy to talk forever on those.
Scott, I have a question for you. This was may not be obvious to people, but can you explain, like, I understand that the birds, one thing that's unique about swifts is that they are incapable of perching on tree branches. And so if they can't, and can you talk a little bit about their biology? Like, I know they have these funny extended feather things at their tails that butt up against the vertical surface. Like, why can't they perch on a branch like most birds?
Okay, it's an excellent question, Jenny. And I wish I had a photograph of that. But there are a couple things going on with swifts. One, they're in the same family of birds as hummingbirds. So they're not what's called a perching bird. Perching birds are our robins and regular songbirds around our yards and things. And swifts evolved clinging on vertical surfaces, so their legs are not positioned for them to stand or walk, but they're closer, I'd say, not related, but structured a bit like a woodpecker. Their tail feathers, they have extended, specialized tail feathers. They're not very long, but they're extended beyond the normal tail, that are stiff, that they use to brace themselves against a vertical surface. And their legs and their sharp claws are much higher so that they can hang on and in a vertical position instead of a horizontal position. Yeah, they're incredibly rarely anywhere but on a vertical surface.
So if a swift for some reason falls to the ground, is it able to fly? Like, I kind of get the feeling from just reading things that it has a hard time getting off the ground. It has to really be airborne until it goes until it gets onto this vertical surface, correct or no?
They're definitely going to have trouble taking off from a horizontal flat surface. Any swift that we've ever that I've been involved in rescuing from chimneys where they fall down into the fireplace, it's always best to take them outside and try to get to an elevated porch or something and give them a boost up. I believe they can probably do it on their own, but with their long wings and stuff, they're hitting the ground and incredibly difficult.
And they are, and on the positive side, they are incredible aerial acrobats.
Yes, to watch them fly and catch insects is really a treat to watch. And to think that they're catching thousands of insects a day up there and we don't even see the insects that are up there that they're going after. They can turn on a dime, and when they're in groups, especially like the video you show of the migrating swarm acting like a tornado funneling into the chimney, it's just incredible how agile and skilled they are. And because they used to think that birds reacted simultaneously in these big flocks. If we, an example of that would be if anybody's seen the murmuration of starlings that goes around the web. You've got thousands of birds moving in what appears to be perfect unison. But with modern high-speed photography, they have found out those birds are actually reacting to the one next to them. I mean, that's how fast they can react. Birds, I mean, they evolved to fly. They've had millions of years practicing, so it makes sense they can do it. But it's really amazing to think that you can have 10,000 birds move where it appears they're doing it in unison, and they're actually just reacting to the bird next to them.
Can you talk a little bit about, I have seen like above my house here in South Bethlehem, sometimes it seems like a pair or maybe three. And it almost, I mean, maybe this is me projecting, my own imagination on them, but it almost seems like two lovers, the way they kind of fly in tandem. Do they like, what is the mating thing? Do they mate for life or not? Or
they're monogamous, which means they at least mate as stay as a pair through the nesting season to raise that brood or group of young. I found nothing that says that they nest for life or a pair for life or anything. But the one thing, and this is something, there's a series of monograms on Birds of North America, called Birds of North America. And I was reading up on it the other day, and almost every section, it said more study needed, because this bird spends almost its entire life in the air. And then migrates all the way to the jungles and forests of northwestern South America. And it really is hard to get a real true study on these birds and their nest sites, even if they're in a chimney. I mean, it's man-made, but it's pretty inaccessible. So there's a lot of missing gaps, but they do courtship flights. The male, they believe, is the one that takes the female and shows her the chimney where he's chosen to nest. There's often a third bird involved, and I wasn't quite sure what that was about, but it is definitely one pair. Okay. And again, most ornithologists.
A third male, is the third bird a male or a female?
Well, that was sort of what they were getting at, is that they don't know, because one of the birds, it was actually started out as a group of 8 birds that they were following in an area. And they could see that 2 of the birds were color banded. So somebody had caught the birds as nestlings or in a net an adult going into a chimney, and put color rings on their legs. Well, these legs are tiny. They're pulled into their feathers of their body when they're flying. So it's really hard to know which bird is which. The males and females of chimney swift look the same. So it's a real difficult bird to study. So, and that's another point, is that ornithology is one of the places where amateurs, people that are just interested, have donated the most knowledge of any science. So anybody that's listening wants to just keep notes and see something interesting, you never know, you may discover something new. But go ahead.
I'm going to chime in there because when I first contacted Scott about the Masonic temple chimney that you see on the screen right now, Scott Burnett, who is not able to be with us tonight, but the first thing he told me asked me, he said, have you registered the Roost? So he has a Google form basically, and I'm going to ask Josh actually after this meeting to post it on the BAPL website, because if you notice a roost this summer, after whoever's out there listening, if you're walking around in the evening, and I encourage everybody to do that, walk around. If you notice a bunch of birds going into a chimney, you can go to this Google form and register the roost. That means you just answer the questions, as many as you can. When did you notice the birds going in? What's the address of the chimney, et cetera, et cetera. And the more roosts we register, that's one of the ways, as Peter was saying, that people who aren't ornithologists, who just love birds or who are just interested in swifts, can add to the bank of knowledge. And I think as citizens and as lovers of nature and as people who are trying to save the earth, we can have fun doing that just as people, just walk around and you see it, register it.
And Cornell has a site on their website also called Project Nest Watch. And I don't know how it would apply to chimney swifts, because most of the time you're not going to be able to tell when they're building a nest or how many eggs they have, which is what the information they want. But it would be interesting to look at that to see how many chimneys we could at least register as in use in this city. And that would give us an idea of the breeding population in the and none of us have mentioned this, the chimney swift city of USA.
Yeah, thank you, Peter, for that cue. And I apologize to everyone who helped with that effort that I didn't mention it. So on February 2nd, the Bethlehem City Council met, and Olga Negron penned a resolution along with Willie Reynolds, the other council person, and the entire city council voted 7-0 to proclaim that the chimney swift is now the official bird of Bethlehem. And that is so exciting. Woohoo! And even though, it's really just symbolic, it's not a law, it's not an ordinance, it's not a city ordinance. It won't give us any teeth in terms of protecting these birds. However, I feel like symbols are extremely powerful and can really go a long way for us as citizens, just to take note of these birds, to learn more about them. I have one more really specific question, Scott. So how do the birds, so we understand that they eat bugs in the air. How do they drink in the air? And is the Lehigh River significant in that way?
The river, they can, if swift needs additional moisture than what they're gaining from the insects they're eating, they are capable of flying along the surface of water and just skim the water for to get a drink.
Wow. Okay.
So what I did here was I invited our audience to just type their questions into the chat box on the YouTube live screen. So I have a question to share with you.
Okay.
So I'm just going to read it. It's from our friend Brina. And her question is, how long does it take the birds to find new towers? For example, do they start nesting in the first year they are constructed?
It varies. And that's a very, very good question. And that's one we're still trying to figure out. One thing that, and I'll attribute this knowledge to John Noble, because when he first found out about the swifts, he did a lot of research and reached out to various Audubon groups around the country that are doing work with them. There's a group in Western Pennsylvania called the Audubon Society of Western Pennsylvania that's built over 100 towers. But down in North Carolina, they were demolishing a big industrial tower for redevelopment. And the local Audubon chapter raised the funds to build a huge masonry chimney in its replacement. But it was something like they couldn't do it on site. The developer didn't want it there. So they built it about 6 miles away. And from my understanding, after years, the Swifts never found it. So it can be either never or the very first year, like the tower down near Lake Muhlenberg, where it looked like the first 2 years we had 2 Swifts using it. So it probably depends on population density and reproductive success in the area where young birds are looking for new places to nest. I don't think if John Noble had to build a replacement, as long as it was suitable for the Swifts, 60 feet away, they'd find it right away. And these birds aren't blind. But if you build it out like this one in this picture here, where it's obviously out in a meadow, if there isn't a natural population nesting in the area, it may take years for a pioneering pair to find it.
Is there, or are there guidelines or suggestions as to where you might want to build one? You mentioned that group that built a whole bunch. Like, could someone who just has like a large backyard and wants to help put one up, or is there a special?
Absolutely. Process? No, the only real deciding factor is making sure that it's in the wide open so that the birds, I mean, these birds are moving fast and they're agile, but they don't want obstacles in their way. So you're going to want a fair amount of open space around the tower and build it tall enough so it's above any surrounding vegetation so that it's easy for them to get to. Scott built one on his garage in West Allentown, and I don't believe he's had any takers, but he blames it on a whole lot of wiring on telephone poles close by. I don't have one at my house yet, and want to try it one of these days, but yeah, wide open, and anybody can have one. And they're not difficult to build. The hardest thing about them that we have run into is the footer has to be pretty strong because they should be about 15 to 18 feet tall. So you need something that's going to hold them upright and vertical, and getting the pieces together because they're built in 3 to 4 sections. And so having some way to lift the structure into place is a good idea as well.
Peter, I remember when Scott was consulting with John Noble, before John decided to try to save the existing chimney, we met there and we sort of stood on Brighton Street, and Scott was looking at the wires. So what you were saying about the wires and how high above that the new chimney, the replacement chimney would have to be. And he talked about a certain radius or radius or diameter of free space. So that wide open space that you're talking about, it doesn't have to be endless, right? It's just like a certain radius. Like if you look at that stone chimney, there are trees in the background that you have on the screen right now, but they do need a certain wide open space, correct?
Yes, and it doesn't have to be all the way around either. I mean, it's obviously better if it is, but as long as they have a clear path from where they're going to feed, which is wide open for flying insects, to the tower, so open on one side, let's say 50, 60 feet wide, and with a clear flight path out of the area. Probably best right around the tower having 50 or 60 feet so they can spiral to get into the tower. I've also read that they have used woodpecker nesting holes. So I'm thinking even chimneys, if people have chimneys that they're contemplating capping to keep water out, if they make that cap high enough, the birds can go in horizontally and then drop in. So capping isn't the end of the world, but not the greatest thing to do.
Do they do any damage to the chimneys? Is that something that people are concerned about, or?
No. The little twig nests that they build will fall down to the bottom, and any chimney really has a clean out at the bottom where you could take it out if you needed to. I grew up in an old stone farmhouse with a big walk-in fireplace and a damper above the fireplace that we closed in the summer to keep the cold air from, from going through it and stuff. And only opened it in the winter when we had fires. And chimney swift used that my entire life. And we never knew, never noticed anything. And these birds are tiny. So they're droppings. I was contacted by a man studying pesticides in chimney swift droppings, but he needs chimneys that are like 100 years old or 75 years old because it takes so long for it to build up. I mean, it really shouldn't be a concern.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I remember the first thing that John Noble asked me when he called me back in December, he said, "What about these birds?" And, I was trying to convince him that it could be a positive for his development and that it could be an attraction because he's going to have a restaurant as part of the development plan. And I told him, look, your people who are dining, they can watch this beautiful site. And he said, oh, yeah, but what about the droppings? And I didn't know the answer to that. But then I asked Scott, and Scott said just what Peter is saying, that they're actually incredibly clean birds. Like, it's very difficult to find their droppings. So they must, put their droppings out when they're flying far away from their roost. So, they aren't a problem in your chimney for that reason anyways. They really, what I've heard is that you can let them roost there, and then you have your chimney sweep come in the late fall when they're gone, use your chimney in the winter, and then they come back in the spring when you're not using your chimney and they're not a problem. Go ahead, Peter, I'm sorry.
No, I was just laughing because I did read an article a couple weeks ago that because of this project, a researcher contacted me, and he has a picture of him standing in a chimney, and the droppings were probably about 5.5 feet deep in that chimney.
Whoa!
But I believe it was in England or old Quebec City where it had been there for an incredible amount of time, and they had excavated down into it, and they're starting. This is the research on the pesticide use, and this is how they've determined that before widespread pesticide use, the bird's primary prey was flying beetles, and it has changed over time because of that. And they could actually figure out by the depth. But as far as John's concerned, I'm thinking he's probably thinking about people sitting eating at an outdoor terrace or something. And these guys are not pigeons or ducks. They're not, I mean, the odds are incredible unlikely. And I think that would be a great promotion for a restaurant to have swift dinners at sunset.
Seriously. Yeah, seriously. It's such a beautiful sight to watch them go in. Yeah. I have another really specific question. So I read this account by the John Audubon, right? Who drew the beautiful pictures of birds and has that big giant book that's actually at Linderman Library. You can see a copy of it under glass. And along with the pictures of swifts is an account of him finding a hollow tree down south somewhere, and go where the chimney swifts were roosting. And this whole account of him going in, drilling a big hole at the bottom of the hollow tree to go inside and study these birds. And that tree also had been home to chimney swifts for many, many years. So he talked about this really deep. Now, he used a word, and I don't remember it, but I looked it up, and it was the word of this deep pile of stuff at the bottom of the hollow tree was the exoskeletons of bugs.
Right.
Now, is that what the chimney swifts are excreting? Oh,
yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how they're doing the study on what their prey was.
So that's the undigestible part of the bug.
Yep. Yeah,
Interesting.
because droppings tend to degrade and disintegrate, where the exoskeletons, I'm not sure of this, but they're probably made of keratin or something and last for a long time.
Interesting.
I have a
Okay.
couple questions from the group for you.
Okay.
The first one here is from Haley, and she asks if swifts are susceptible to West Nile virus the way that raptors and corvids are.
Very good question. And I will throw a guess at this because I don't know. Yeah, corvids, which are crows, blue jays, American crow, fish crow, owls, birds of prey, hawks, red-tailed hawks were clobbered. Rough grouse. I have heard no mention of chimney swifts. And it may be because they're protected from mosquitoes. When they're primarily active, the birds are roosting in a chimney and probably protected, so they're not exposed, would be my guess why they're not in the literature that I've read on West Nile.
Okay, great. The next question is Brina's asking about the towers and the chimneys, and she's wondering if you know anything else about the ideal distance between towers or chimneys to make it easy for birds to find new towers. Is there a distance that in some sense is ideal? Like you don't want too many in one area, you'd rather have them X distance apart.
Well, and again, I really don't, I'm going to give you my educated guess, but envision a city street with row homes with a chimney in every house. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if at least every third house had an occupied chimney, if it was suitable for them to use and the population was there to fill them. They're tolerant of other non-nesting swifts roosting in an active nesting chimney, so they don't seem to be intolerant of their same species. So as long as there's a decent amount of personal space, and let's say 50 feet, I would guess you could put all the towers up you want. But I don't know if anybody's going to do that. But I would say that if you have let's say if the 2 towers down at Lake Muhlenberg were used every year, I could see putting another tower down there in the area. And if you have a tower that is so far unused, I would say don't bother putting one there. The one at my local township building, which is way out in the open, up on a hillside, seems like an ideal spot. Tons of open space, a little marshy area next to it for insects. I think I didn't check it during 2020, thanks to COVID. The park was closed. But I think it was the first 3 years that it was up, we had no activity that we knew of. Could have been used for roosting and migration, but there were no nests.
Here's a follow-up question about their droppings. Can the droppings be used as fertilizer, as is done with bats?
And many other birds. Matter of fact, with the number of birds in our yard during the snow, I have about 300 juncos. I feed heavily. My wife's saying the yard's going to be real green in spring. Right. I don't know how nutritious keratin is as a fertilizer, but I imagine any bird droppings that are actually droppings and not by offal from their prey would be beneficial. I can't imagine getting enough to harvest it, though, in reality.
Right. You're saying that it's...
Josh, I wanted to mention, I'm not sure what the motivation for all the questions about towers is, but I did want to mention, and this is for you, Brina, I guess, but for anybody else out there who's interested, Mr. Cologne, who's one of our city council members, mentioned at the February 2nd city council meeting, he actually suggested that we use some of our public land in Bethlehem, our parkland, to build as land to build chimney swift towers on, which is really cool for that to be suggested by a council member. So I am hoping that might be a next step for us, the us being the general, whoever is interested in saving these birds or promoting their health and well-being, that we might be able to sprinkle towers throughout the city of Bethlehem on public land. So yeah, and we can, there's lots of people who are trying to do that, including Lehigh Valley Audubon, with Peter and Scott's advice and mentoring. If we have, Scott has built many, many towers himself. He says per tower, he spends about $1,000 on materials. And that's not including, he does it for free. I think everybody at Lehigh Valley Audubon, by the way, is volunteer. And so all his tower building efforts are volunteer, but the materials cost about $1,000. And he says that's a little high because he uses, he builds them to last, and he uses a masonry for the foundation. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, some people just plant the 4x4 pressure treat into the ground, and we do a foundation, as I joked about the one at our township building. Our one of our environmental advisory council members is a bridge builder on his day job, and he dug the footer, and I think you could hit that tower with a tank and it's going to stop it. That footer is going nowhere. But as with any building, it's only as strong as its footer.
Here's a question from Linda, who wonders, how similar are these American swifts to European swifts? If you know the answer.
Incredibly similar. To the best of my knowledge, the common swift in Europe, I'm not sure about their nesting habits because I haven't looked into it, because I was just reading about they're in England, they're developing housing, new housing developments actually incorporate nest boxes into the construction of the houses. But I believe that's for might be the house martin or one of their swallows, and not the swifts. But I believe the common swift in Europe is incredibly similar. And I hate to use the expression, but it's a Google away. And just be careful what site you get the information from, because there is so much information out there that's wrong. It's scary. But you could also write me on the side at Lehigh Valley Audubon Society and ask me those questions, or any questions for that matter, where I can actually check a reference that I trust and give you an educated, complete answer. And
no, I'm sorry.
No, I just gonna say, if anybody wants that, just do a web search. I'll avoid Google again, for Lehigh Valley Audubon Society, and my email address is on there.
And if you want to make it really easy, you can just respond to the message that shared the information about tonight's program, and I'll forward it to Peter. So that's another option if you have a follow-up question.
Yeah, any question that I had to guess or use an educated, make an educated guess about, and you want me to follow up in person, please just put that in the chat and I'll do that.
I did want to say, I'm wondering if that Linda might have been Linda Lipkiss. She doesn't have to identify herself, but there is a beautiful book that I've just, I'm in the middle of reading, that Linda is also reading. She's a librarian at Lehigh University Music Department. And this book is called Vesper Flights. And it's by this incredible writer. And she has a chapter in that book, as well as she's written a beautiful article in New York Times Magazine this past summer, I think in July, called, I don't remember the title of the article, but anyways, she talks about these common swifts, these birds in England and the others, and they migrate between Africa and England. So the different migration route, obviously. I think their nests, Peter, are more like swallow nests. I think they build their nests kind of under eaves and things like that, but I'm really not sure.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that because I just don't remember why I found that article, and I have a feeling it might be because I was doing something on swifts and found out that they're building these new developments with nesting spots for their swifts in the new construction. And if we could only be that green.
Yeah, that would be so awesome.
That was the correct Linda. Points to you, Jenny. Nice to hear from another librarian.
Yeah, happy to have you here, Linda.
Yes. Thank you to all who have come.
Yes.
I don't see any more questions in the chat at the moment. What's the date of our next one again?
Hang on one second.
You want to promote it while we're all here before we sign off?
Yes, I'll give you the date of the next two. So March 11th, which is not the same day of the week. That's a Thursday. And that's going to feature Peter again and Christine Usler, our wonderful historian and architect in Bethlehem. And then on April 21st, we're going to have a panel discussion with all the panelists that I mentioned earlier. Very excited about both of those. And anybody who's inspired by this bird and by this whole effort, please don't hesitate to reach out to Josh or me or Peter through Josh. And yeah, we want to keep building this enthusiasm for the Swifts and ideas for helping the population of Swifts survive and revive.
And Peter's cat made an appearance. Every Zoom meeting needs one technical glitch and one random pet appearance. So we've fulfilled our quota, and I'm happy to see so many people attend. And thank you so much, Peter, for tagging in that last minute to put that together. I wouldn't, you didn't tell us that it was last minute, we would not have guessed. So
well, I'm glad to hear that, but cool. I never did start with my disclaimer that I put that together this morning quickly and didn't manage to get any photo credits on there. So don't hold it against me if I broke any copyright laws. I'm not profiting from this.
Fair use. Fair use. And I think it's great that the whole city is getting involved in this project. And as Jenny said, if anyone watching wants to be connected further, you have my email. So
let me give one more plug. The Bethlehem Gadfly, Ed Gallagher, has really been doing an incredible job keeping up with all the Swift goings on. He's doing an amazing job. So if you Google the Bethlehem Gadfly Swifts, you'll see just it's a blog, and he's been reporting on the evolution of this passion of our city for these birds, and so he's a good resource.
And Jenny, I'll plug you a little bit there because this really is your doing, and you're a rare find for someone with so much energy to focus in on such a worthy cause. So you and John we should probably put statues of you next to the tower.
I'm telling you, it's been such a pleasure. When you find a passion and you roll with it, it's just such a pleasure. It's been a joy and people are just, responding so beautifully. I am just so excited about the response. I'm really excited. I hope to get, I think young people in particular, I don't know. I think, we need to draw the young people in, and I think they are interested. So I'm hoping, especially in our last panel, and because we have Lehigh professors involved, that we can pull some students in. And Yeah, when I pulled
Hmm.
some young people in to watch these beautiful birds go into the Masonic Temple chimney, they all got so inspired. Yeah,
And actually, your grade of students, I think, is the most critical. I mean, I was second grade when I got interested in birds, but
wow.
I've always said you need to educate them on birds or get them interested by fifth grade, or they're lost. And the younger, the
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, my fourth graders are all about the Swifts. They're really
Yeah.
into it.
And who can say no to a fourth grader? Look
Exactly.
look at city council.
Exactly. Amen to that.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thank
Thank you,
both.
Josh.
Yeah, thank you, Josh.
Happy to do it. Yeah, we'll do it again soon,
Okay.
March 11th.
Yay.
Everybody be safe.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.